Celtics Reddit podcast.
Back out to Smart. Fakes the pass all the time. Three. Bang! It's Williams screen. Lobs it up for Robert Williams.
Shouldn't he know? Jaylen Brown. What a dunker!
Tatum. Durant, the long reach. Tatum crossover pull-up jumper. It's good. 50 points for Jason Tatum.
Hello and welcome to the Celtics Reddit podcast. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Coming up on the show, it is official. Trade season is upon us with the February 10 trade deadline looming. It's rumor city at the moment. But before we get into that, we've got a recent stretch of promising Celtics performances to get to. Joining us for all of that and more, Newcastle's finest, Jackson, aka Rickman Lives. Jackson, how you doing, sir?
Yeah, not too bad, man. Not too bad. I'm a little bit vax weary. I know we don't want to get too heavily into that, but yeah, beyond that, man, pretty good indeed. Thank you.
Got that boost of fatigue. Well, thanks for sticking it out with us. And of course, our New Zealand correspondent, Joe, aka Nose Crides McFly. And Joe, I believe congratulations are in order. Did I hear that you perhaps got engaged?
Yeah, man, I got engaged. Got the old dusty knee. Yeah. For the Kiwis and a few Aussies up Mount Maunganui. She was a bit on the hoof, but
Whoa!
But we got it done. We got it done, mate. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it, man. That's awesome.
No, it's
Congrats.
cool. It's cool. So shout out to Rach, who has been known to listen to these podcasts from time to time, boosting our numbers.
That must be that one listener that keeps popping up.
Thanks. Yeah, exactly. That one listener from Manganaparu. So she did sort of need a little prompting to say yes, but that's just because she was so happy,
Sure.
that she forgot.
Good stuff, man. Well done.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Yeah. And Joe, he sent us an image of his dusty knee in our Slack, and I initially was like, oh, he's got a bruise. He's done an ACL. Like, he's a baller. And he had to sort of talk me through, like, no, this is what it means, Ben, you idiot. And so thank you for that. I didn't realize that was like a clue that like a proposal had happened if you send a picture of a dusty knee. So you learned something.
Well over my head too, man. Don't worry.
No. To be fair, like I was just being purposefully cryptic, and I thought, it's fun if people get it. So about 50% of the boys got it, and 50% didn't. So you're in fine company.
Good to know. Thank you for softening the blow. All right, well, congrats again, man. We've got a lot to get to on this podcast, but before we get to all of that juicy trade talk, the Celtics have been playing pretty well lately, excluding that shocker against the Blazers. We're going to just forget about that one entirely. Reddit user Hawking Sucks in today's daily discussion thread wrote, God damn it, I'm enjoying the Boston Celtics again. I'm ready to be hurt. Oh, yes, I am completely there with you. Jackson, we'll start with you. What do you attribute this latest upswing to? Is it for real, or is it just part of the broader issues with consistency for this team?
I think we just played two really bad teams. I mean, the Wizards aren't terrible. I think we just got them on a particularly terrible night. And I think just the shots were going in. That's the very like layman's lazy version of looking at it. But, I didn't see like a huge amount of difference other than Marcus Smart coming back in, which I'm sure we'll touch upon a little bit later too. But I think as far as these two wins in a vacuum are concerned, just the shot was going in. The opponents weren't great. If we are going to forget about the Portland example as well, I would be considering buying in that you can raise the expectations maybe up a slight level moving forward here. But I don't know. The season's been too up and down, too 50-50 to be properly on board yet. But I mean, you don't get the second largest win ever, biggest win at the TD Garden, without being, having something to it. So I'm a little bit encouraged, but I'm not getting carried away just yet.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it does help when you play the Kings, but in that Hornets loss, there was some good ball movement there. It was obviously a disappointing outcome, but the team played fairly well and have done for the most part in January. Joe, what do you think? Are you buying into this recent stretch, or are you still unconvinced?
Well, it was just interesting, Jackson pointing out that, hey, where this ranked in the Celtics all-time margin of victory, kind of standings. Gee, I wish I had another go at that sentence, but it's too late. It's out there. It's recorded.
Just like the Celtics season.
You've got to find your way out now.
Yeah. But what was number one, Jackson? What was number one? Do you know what number one was?
56 against the Bulls 3 years ago.
Yeah, what? And if you wanted to draw some parallels between those particular seasons, do you think you could?
A largely unenjoyable experience overall, but that was a fun afternoon.
Yeah, and do you remember thinking, all right, they've turned it around. This convincing win against a half-decent Bulls team. We've figured it out. Championship number 18 is on the cards.
That's right, our average margin of victory. After that Bulls... That 18-19 team wasn't actually as bad as people remember. It just got completely in its own head after, right around the All-Star break.
Mm-hmm.
When they lost to the Lakers is when it went downhill. But this is all Rondo hitting the shot at the buzzer, and then we lost to the Clippers the next day after being down up by 25 or something like that anyway. And then it all went sideways. But moving on. I think, mate, we've got to see a lot more of it, 2 games does not a season make, and look, to be honest, mate, random games of 60-point wins against the Sacramento Kings butter no parsnips, do they? So
I guess not.
so I mate, 20-game rule still applies. Need to see 20 games of where we go 15-5 or something like that before I'm willing to really lend this team any of my trust. But I would say, particularly in the Washington game, I think the pace was noticeably different. Mm-hmm. We've really got to push that ball up the floor, and that means, man, we need to get Schroeder needs to get lost pronto.
Yeah, well, we're going to be talking trades pretty soon, and I dare say Schroeder's name might be uttered 1 or 5 times. You talked about sample size there, Joe. I was just trying to find the Dan Greenberg tweet, friend of the show, where because it adds, we're talking about sample size, it adds to the still admittedly small sample size of our starting lineup playing together, and they continue to have very good numbers as a 5-man lineup. I couldn't find the tweet, unfortunately, so I can't give you those numbers.
I've seen a few variations of it where it's like the starting lineup has a net rating of plus 13.9, and we've been outscored by 39 points over the other minutes that everyone else has played together, right? Yeah. But we know this, right? Like, we know that our average margin of victory and our average net rating suggests a team that is a lot better than what our record is. But we also know that our record is actually quite deserved.
Yeah.
You can't keep losing these games and call it unlucky,
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Like, we've had such a little, relative to other successful teams, with the exception of perhaps the Bulls, we've had such a little glance at our full starting cohort over the stretch of the season so far, and I think you've got to consider the fact that they're so young as well, and that there is a developmental aspect. And for them not to get that time together does mean something. And then when we do see them together, they are good. So maybe I'm clutching at straws. Maybe I'm still scrambling for ways to enjoy the season. But to me, it's the knowledge that those guys are good together helps. John Corrales said on his podcast today that Jason Tatum was, quote, Giannis-like in getting into the paint in this recent stretch. So an example of that, he did provide probably a way more in-depth look at the stats than I will now. But for Tatum, drives per game in November, 11.7 at 35% field goal percentage on finishing those drives. Drives per game in January, 13.5, finishing at 50% from the field. And in the last 3 games, questionable defenses, sure, finishing at 65% on 13 drives per game. Suffice to say, Tatum playing well means that the team succeeds as well. Jackson, are you buying into, again, we're talking about turnarounds here, but is Tatum finding it as he tends to do later in the season?
Yeah, well, it's kind of remarkable, the regularity in which he kind of comes alive. It's like he has his alarm clock set for mid-January, and it's like, oh shit, hang on, it's time to get going. Here we go, and and he looks incredible. Not to deviate too far away, he's probably going to get an all-star vote just on reputation and being an incumbent now. I feel, and maybe he gets up for that. Maybe there's something about like just the way he looks after himself or the way in his personal life. I don't know. That's pure speculation. But if I am going to sort of get on board with the idea that we are turning it around properly, you could probably historically point to Tatum's form this time of the year, and to absolutely like destroy the Kings. And like 36 is nothing to be. He had 36, right? Nothing to be sneezed at, but it's not like he was, it's not like 51. It's not like mid 40s game or whatever. So, if he goes, it feels like the rest of the team goes. And yeah, I'll probably attribute some of that to Tatum getting going. But we keep coming back to just, I got to see more of it before I'm fully on board with it, really.
Well, are we sort of litigating the point that John Corrales made? Friend of the pod, by the way. Is that what you're intending to do? Is he like Giannis getting into the paint? Is that the point we're trying to argue?
Well, so Corrales' point was that the numbers in terms of getting into the paint and then executing successfully once in that position, being in the paint, is very comparable to Giannis in recent days. So the stats don't lie. I mean, I highly recommend going and listening to that Corrales pod because he breaks it down like quite heavily and thoroughly. But yeah, I mean, the numbers, they are comparable.
Okay, so the stats don't lie. The stats really can lie here, and I'm not going to dogmatically, hang on to this point because I want Tatum to be a low variance producer of offense, and this is critical to him being able to do it. Mm-hmm. So hey, look, if his mentality or his game and his skills have adapted to make him better at that, that's cool. But like, let's just think about what makes Giannis really, really difficult, right? Another thing to think about, though, is Giannis, no one's even guarding his jump shot, right? Mm-hmm. Like, Giannis can just manufacture points in the paint. So, just first of all, I'll pose the question back to you, lads. Do you feel like Jason Tatum can manufacture points in the paint in the same manner that Giannis can?
Not to the same degree. I think he's very good at, like, overpowering and just, like, forcing himself into the paint. But no, not to the degree that Giannis can do, at least not yet, anyway.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah, no.
So
he's not as good as he
I don't even think he's in the same stratosphere. There's some really fundamental Tatum. It's quite unbelievable how much he manages to score, really. But he's got some. To me, he's got some really gaping flaws in his skill set. We've talked a lot about how he really struggles going left. Mm-hmm. Back in his rookie year, he used to finish on the left-hand side of the hoop with his right hand an awful lot. Bill Simmons used to talk about it like it was his move. You don't see that anymore. Guess why? Because it's a really easily blockable shot. Like, it's crap. We get taught not to do it from young kids, when we're going up, we get taught left-hand side of the hoop, right foot, left hand.
Yeah.
And
he is
Tatum,
finishing with his left hand now, though.
Yeah. And there's been a couple of times where I have, but, that's... it's not something that, like, he lacks. I think it would be fair to say that overall, relative to most elite NBA players, Tatum lacks some ambidexterity. The second thing is he gets really off balance when he drives. That's why he gets a lot of push-off fouls. He gets his nose in front of his toes a lot, and as a result, a lot of his finishes are really awkward. Now, contrast that with Jalen. Jalen's a worse player, but Jalen is a vastly superior threat as a slasher because he doesn't get off balance. Tatum gets really out in front of his skis a lot, and then finally Tatum tends to. I reckon the hardest thing in basketball is in traffic getting the ball from your knees above your forehead. If you can get it from there to there, man, you can that almost like. I don't know what percentage of the game you would say is that, but man, far it feels like a quarter of the game, honestly. Like when I'm playing, I'm like, if I could just get it above my forehead, I can control it. And I really feel like Tatum struggles to get the ball above his forehead in traffic.
Sure.
And he's, it's not as, and to me, it makes sense that he would rely on his fadeaway, and rely on his jump shot. Now, the numbers may be what the numbers are. I would tend to chalk that up to a statistical aberration, absent, like, visual evidence of his if his ability to manufacture points in like high leverage situations changing. Now, man, I hope he does, because we, that's the difference between him being kind of a little bit of an empty calorie scorer and like really close to an MVP candidate. It's the difference between him being like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, or not in terms of style, but in terms of status. Those guys are different status. Anyway, I've kind of ranted for a bit. I do have a compliment that I want to return to Tatum before we finish, but I want to leave that there for
if you had
comment.
anything nice to say about him.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Or do you want me to go? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a copy of Danger Cart's. Danger Cart had a great point that he made, and you have to consider this. Jason Tatum doesn't miss games, right? Certainly not through injuries. Missed a couple through COVID. So the value that he provides in the aggregate sort of exceeds a guy like, say, I don't know, if you have Jaylen Brown, who's really only available 2/3 of the time. Jaylen Brown might even be better in his minutes. Hypothetically, he could be, right? I don't think he is, but let's say he was. Well, the fact is he's out for games and doesn't play as many minutes. Tatum just swallows a minute's workload. So, look, even though he's got his flaws relative to other elite players, if he's on the floor for longer, he actually provides more value, right? Like, it's sort of like even if his rate is a little bit lower, if the base amount of units is higher, he's going to provide more value overall. And that's really important, because if you can't stay on the floor, you can't provide value to your team, like especially through the course of a regular season. So I just thought it was important to acknowledge that, because Tatum clearly can come on the floor, and also I'm not worried about his shooting. He will shoot it.
Yep.
He has to progress to the mean.
Everyone on three. Availability is
the best availability.
There we go.
100%.
I use that so much in life too, and I got it from this show. Thank you guys.
Say it in every job interview.
I say to my team, it's like, I'm sick today. Well, did you know availability is the best ability? Okay, sir, I'll come in. Thank you.
I feel like Ben must feel like that a lot of times, given the amount of times we bail on him.
We've got a full team now. We've got a US office, so we're fine.
Yeah,
There's
we
always
do.
someone up for a pod. You mentioned Tatum's shooting. First of all, those are really interesting points that you make, Joe, and points that people like myself, I think, need to hear, who just look at the stats and watch the games, ball watch a lot, admittedly, and watch Tatum succeed and think like, great, he's on his way, all NBA, something team. We're going to build around this guy. He's a potential MVP. And to have his flaws, which in the back of my mind, like, that he has, and if he wasn't a flawed player, then we wouldn't be a 500 team. But he's young and he is flawed, so we are. It's good, I guess, for me and probably a lot of folks listening to hear some of those factors quantified a little bit. So thank you for that. There's a comment from user ZGamer200 who says, on the shooting aspect, this team is likely a top 6 seed right now if Tatum was shooting roughly 38% from 3 instead of his current 32.4%. But the fact that he's had so many off nights shooting-wise has forced Tatum to learn to affect the game in other ways aside from raining threes, and that's going to be good for his long-term development. And then in addition to that, Steve Bullpet, also a friend of the show, had that quote from Jason Tatum where he called the shooting slump, quote, a blessing in disguise. So not trying to extract more compliments out of you, Joe, and Jackson, I want to hear from you on this as well, but like, is there anything that he's showing you in this recent stretch? Because I do feel strongly about this, that he is starting to like build out I guess a more complete like player archetype for himself, where he's got more go-to scoring opportunities now with the drive and with getting to the line more, with the kickouts, with the higher efficiency in the paint. Like, are you just going to write this off to playing against a bunch of bad defenses in this recent stretch?
Yeah, no, certainly not. Look, I don't have the tuned in analytical brain or like, comprehension to sort of remember like little bits and pieces here. But I mean, if you want an example, like there was a great pass that he threw out of a double team to Josh Richardson in the corner for the buzzer beater in the first half against the Kings, and I remember thinking to myself, I haven't seen him like do that before. If I haven't seen him do it enough. So I think he's like learning to deal with a double team and pass out of that a lot more. But as far as like scoring, getting into the paint is concerned, I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm a simple man. I see the ball go through the hoop and I'm like, good. I see it go, not go in the hoop. I'm like, that sucks. What's wrong with him? And he's just been doing it more often. So as long as that we keep doing that, then like, simpletons like me are happy. But I'm sure this season, now that it's just kind of like it's really his team, but like officially it's like him and JB's team. I'm sure they're learning a lot out of this. I'm sure they're getting a lot of probably like mental reps up here to sort of deal with crap like this. And I think, for the most part, you might hear some noise, like there's a little bit of discontent here and there, but they all seem to pretty much like each other, and the chemistry seems to be fine as far as I can tell. So as long as like mentally he's up here and there's a bit of resilience going on, if that shot starts falling, then I think that's all we really need from him at the moment. And if the finer points of his game can continue, which I think they will, then I think he'll turn into what we hope he will be.
Yeah, I mean, he's a 40% three-point shooter. Like, he's a real shooter. He's got, to me, like, his shot has some... It's hard to call them technical flaws, because if you can ever shoot 40% for an entire NBA season on volume, like, your technique probably doesn't matter that much. But I wouldn't teach my kids to shoot how Tatum shoots. He's got a kind of a slingshot. Like, since we got YouTube, I'll just do a quick demo, but, like, hang on. It's about the angle of the elbow. So there was actually Danger Cart had put up it was John Corrales and Danger Cart had a little tiff on Twitter. I was firmly in team.
I tried to fuel the fire a little bit.
Yeah, I know they should. They need to fight. But I was on Team John Corrales, but that's beside the point. If you look at that picture, you'll notice that the angle of Tatum's elbow is like this.
Yeah, he's got a really internally
I'll do it with
rotated
my fingers.
shoulder.
It's like that. Like he slings it. Jalen actually does the same thing. If it goes in enough, like, hey, like whatever. But that's not how you teach a kid to shoot. You teach a kid to shoot with the elbow like kind of square, and you push up and your elbow extends like that, as opposed to flexing back like that and catapulting the ball. Mm-hmm. So I can sort of see some reasons for Tatum's shot to maybe suffer from consistency issues. In a way that you wouldn't see, say, Sam Hauser's shot suffer from.
AKA the perfect jump shooter.
Yeah, like, and you can tell, like, just the way I'm borrowing a point from somebody here, but the way Hauser's shots hit the net,
Yep.
Like, that's a wetter shot. But with all that said, Tatum is still a 40% three-point shooter. Like, that he absolutely is. And he will shoot better. And if he was shooting better, yes, we would have a better record. Would we be for real, though, Ben? Would we be for real? If we were, like 27-20 or something like that right now, would we be for real?
That's the thing, and we've been at this point so many times through this season and recent seasons where it's like, okay, we've put together this really good stretch. Now let's see it against a good team with a good defense. And I think the nearest version of that for us is going to be this upcoming game against the Heat, although the Hawks have won 5 straight, I believe, as well. And then it feels like in the last year or so, whenever we've gotten to that point where it's like, please prove it against a good team, we then lose that game, and then the cycle begins again from the beginning. So we're at the end of that part of the cycle where things feel good, we've turned it around, things are great. Now we're at a point where we've got to see it against a good team. I do think eventually, as the Jays mature and as the roster construction matures and settles in properly around the Jays, we will break through that point where suddenly we start to have games like that, not 56 point or 53-point wins or whatever it was, but like decisive victories against good teams. I do think that is in our, I don't want to say near future, but it is in our future as long as we can retain the Jays. But no, I mean, I know I've asked this of you guys already, but like I haven't seen anything behaviorally or otherwise to believe that like suddenly we've fixed things. So no, I don't think that we're for real. I'll go on record saying that. Can we talk about someone else? Because I want to talk about Marcus Smart, who came back for the last 2 games. He's absolutely amazing, plus 36 on average across those 2 games. You can attribute a lot of that to the huge win against the Kings.
He's a true Victorian, Marcus Smart.
Get him up there, I want to buff him. But like unbelievably, 6 field goal attempts per game. which is amazing. I did a bit of a deep dive on Marcus Smart. 12 potential assists per game in those 2 games, which is an awesome stat. But I guess it factors in if everyone can shoot properly, which they can't on the Celtics. 6.5 actual assists per game. But for the most part, I feel like he's been playing like a point guard, almost like Dennis Johnson vibes, where he just is setting everyone up. I feel like in transition, he's been great, and we've seen the team score more successfully in transition as a result, and he's just solid. I don't know. Jackson, am I wrong? Like, I feel really suddenly warm towards Marcus Smart, which is dangerous, I think, heading into this trade deadline period.
No, I think we all love and we all trust Marcus Smart. And I think Brad Stevens loves and trusts Marcus Smart as well, too. I don't think that name's getting dealt this window unless like there's some like amazingly lopsided deal there for us. But you never know. It might happen. I don't think it's certainly no coincidence. We've looked much, much better with him coming back in. Now, is he actually improved himself as a point guard, or is he just an obvious upgrade over Dennis Schroeder? I'm guessing it's probably the latter, and just having that that refreshing sort of sense of having someone in there who plays with a bit of pace and probably gets the team, for lack of a better term, a lot more. What my favorite thing in basketball, like not my favorite thing, but one of my favorite things that I love seeing is the inbounds pass off the guy's back while it's turned for a layup or for a jump shot. And I don't know if Marcus had done that before, but he did it against the Wizards, and it makes me so happy when I see that. I think Trae Young did it against Grant Williams like last season, and I was like, I got head in my hands. I was like, I hate it when it happens to us. So when seeing stuff like that just gets me excited to have him back. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe he is taking the COVID break that he had off to reassess his game and is shifting away from taking more shots or whatnot. But I feel like there's plenty of times where we think like he's getting it and he doesn't take 8 threes a game, but I know for a fact it's going to happen again. Whether that against the Hawks this weekend, Tatum and Brown could be like 4 for 20 combined. Up comes Marcus Smart with the 3, and it might go in. It might be great, but I think we're just seeing an obvious upgrade on Schroeder these last couple games, which is why we've looked better. But I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point. What do you reckon, Joe?
Oh, I think he's hugely influenced the tempo that the team plays with. Look, I'm irrational a little bit about Smart. There's times I'm thinking I have a shot in mind that he took that he just really shouldn't have. I think it was against the Knicks. I think we might have been up 2 in the last minute or something like that. There was an obvious swing pass to Jaylen Brown that he didn't make. It got pointed out on like Mo Duckheel's Twitter feed, if you guys follow Mo. Like it was a bit of a glaring one, and sometimes I think like there are grounds for really serious grounds for criticizing his game, but to me I just see him as such an intuitive and creative player who there's a reason why they talk about him being one of those guys that impacts winning. He really does. He makes things happen out of nowhere. And yeah, he does take some stuff off the table. But I think he's a point guard. I think he's a really creative playmaker. I think he's a better offensive or more threatening offensive player than his numbers show. And that's, historically was borne out by how teams guarded him on the 3-point line. Like, why are teams closing out like crazy on a 30% 3-point shooter? Because he'll take him.
Yeah.
That's why. And you kind of got to accept that as part of the deal. Now, that said, if Marcus is taking 15 shots a game, that's going to be detrimental to your team. Mm-hmm. But Marcus, when he goes 3 for 10 and has 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals or something like that, I guarantee your team is like, that's a very typical Smart line, right? I guarantee your team's probably doing okay with it. Your team can survive him shooting 30%, I love him. I never want to really trade him. I hope he's here when we're really good again.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's stick with Smart. I did want to spend some time shouting out other individual performances. Obviously, Time Lord has been great. Jalen's been pretty solid and kind of filling out those second guy numbers in these last few games. Grant Williams continues to splash threes. Josh Richardson's been great off the bench. But we won't spend time deep diving into those guys. We'll just sort of acknowledge them and move on. So before we get to these trade scenarios, these specific trade scenarios that have sort of been discussed and passed around in the media over the last, week or so, few days, it feels silly asking this question based on what we've all just said. Is it time in general to move on from Marcus Smart? And before you answer, Jackson, I'll tell you where this sort of how this question was prompted. I've been talking to our old mate Larbird 33. We communicate regularly over our Instagram DMs, and he likes to point out to me when Marcus Smart isn't good, which is fine. It's just regular sports fan discussion. The last 2 games, I've sort of been pushing back to Larbird a little bit, saying like Smart's been great. Like we talk about needing a playmaker. Like look at this guy, he's been amazing. But Larbird is pretty convinced that it's just time for whatever reason, and he's entitled to that opinion, to move on from Marcus Smart. Jackson, do you think we're just at a point where like we've gone as far as we can get with Smart, and we need to look what we can get back for him and try something else?
If I realistically thought there was an obvious upgrade available, I would be inclined to say yes. I look at the market of let's just say of point guards that we could potentially get, and like I don't have the extensive knowledge of what's possible and what's not this window or the next, but there's just nothing out there that I see is worth sacrificing for, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, you could upgrade, just raw scoring, but everything that Joe said applies. I think, he brings way more to the team than just, a Draymond Green kind of stat line. He influences winning in a lot of different ways. So absolutely, that is a hard no from me. I do not want to entertain the idea of moving on from him unless, like I said earlier, there is an obviously lopsided trade from some desperate team that wants it. Like even like Halliburton, like we got a good look at Halliburton, and that's been like the sexy name that's been thrown up. He had a bit of a terrible game, but I do like him as a player. That's still a no from me, to be perfectly honest. I wouldn't be prepared to do it just yet.
Yeah, I mean, what are we achieving by doing it, And I guess the same criticism could be lobbed at me when I've sort of floated, Brown for Simmons type trades before. What are we really achieving? I see Smart as the kind of role player you are definitely going to want on your team when you're actually good. And I just don't know what would be available for him in a trade is going to move the needle for the team in a regular season, and certainly not in the playoffs. So, like, I mean, no one's untradeable, right? If you offered me Marcus Smart for, I don't know, Paul George, yeah, I guess you have to do it, right? Like Jackson's saying, but I don't see the trade out there that reshapes our team, in a significant way, which is to me probably like how I'd try and define the threshold, but it'd have to reshape our team in a way that's quite material. We'd have to look quite different afterwards. And I don't see that for us. I see the path to us being a contender as being like an ugly defensive juggernaut. And that certainly isn't going to be furthered by trading Smart.
Yeah, it's tough because you mentioned Smart is the ideal role player on a contending team, but how do we get the pieces we need to be a contending team without sending out some value? And Marcus Smart, Robert Williams are 2 guys not named Jason or Jalen who, have value. So, it would be all good to have Smart around when we've got all the other pieces to say, okay, we're definitely a contender, but like, how do we get them without giving up something in return? Maybe it's by giving up all or most or some of our picks. Maybe it's by, a sudden ascent by Pritchard or Neesmith, which seems unlikely. But I guess it's like, in conclusion, Marcus Smart has more value to us than he does elsewhere around the league. And I think Marcus Smart has more value to us, the Celtics, than anything that we could get straight up in a trade for him. He could be part of a package where we add other salaries and picks and get a Beal, which we'll get to. But yeah, I just think Smart's better off in Celtics green than he is elsewhere. Having said
and
that...
there's a reason...
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, sorry, I just wanted to add, like, there's also, like, hey, we're fans. And we actually just want to cheer for guys we like. And, you know, that, hey, at the end of the day, that's what makes a difference in the experience of being a fan. It's been able to cheer for a guy like Marcus Smart. I love it, you know? So, as a fan, I just don't want to trade him for somebody who's just kind of, you know, milquetoast, you know? As a you know, I don't, like, I've got a lot of emotion invested in him, you know?
I agree.
and I don't want to, you know, like, I like Halliburton, but, like, yeah, okay, whatever, you know, like, there's an emotional vacuum there that's not really filled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for Halliburton to be averaging, I think, close to 10 assists on that team, on that Kings team, is pretty impressive. Like, he must be really setting those guys up because, I don't know, obviously we haven't watched a lot of Kings games, but they're not particularly impressive, so he must be doing a good job of putting those guys in position to score, which you could argue we need desperately. Okay, so feel free to bring Smart's name up again in this part of the discussion, but of the names that have been floating around recently, so Bradley Beal, Harrison Barnes, Terrence Ross, Jalen Brunson, Kyle Anderson, and Jeremy Grant, I think again today, came up in a tweet on the subreddit. Are there any names in particular that stand out to you, Joe, or is selling and getting under the tax and playing the young guys more appealing as opposed to trading for one of those guys?
Yeah, I really feel like we're looking for more of an addition by subtraction, kind of. We need that sort of strategy, more so than actually acquiring another piece right now. I don't think we've got the pieces to acquire an elite player. I think we just need to get particularly Schroeder out of the rotation,
Mm-hmm.
and like trading for a guy like Harrison Barnes. I mean, I just don't see that as solving our problems. Like, we've got 2 All-NBA or All-Star wing players. Like, that's a lot more wing depth than anybody's got, you know? And if Neesmith's a player, that's plenty. That's 3 wings. How many more do you need, you know? Mm-hmm. So let's see if Neesmith's a player before we try and put someone in front of him in the rotation.
Yeah, there's just nothing that moves the needle for me, like at all. So if it was a trade that, here's the thing, there are obviously not all trades are going to be like, you know, the lottery winning blockbuster trades. It's going to take you from here to here, like the KG Ray Allen sort of situation. There's going to be trades and acquisitions you're going to need to make that's going to like be building the house sort of brick by brick. Like that's an important piece, even if it doesn't, you know, particularly, you know, excite you. But I don't feel as if getting rid of any of the guys that we currently have or any of the assets that we currently have for what we would get in return is going to be worth it. You know, I could be wrong. You know, there could be, you know, Kyle Anderson. You know, I'd like the idea of a Kyle Anderson on this team. But as far as the other guys are concerned, I mean, the Beal thing's never going to go away, is it? You know, as long as, you know, Jason Tatum is on this team and alive, Bradley Beal is going to be linked with us. So, you know, I'm preparing for like years of that before he signs somewhere else. But no, I don't think there's anything that's out there that we should consider, unless, you know, someone is coming to us with a Godfather offer. Like, if we're gonna just like play fantasy for a second, like, you know, I'll listen to like anything, basically anyone you want, not named, starting with J, for like a DeJounte Murray or something like that. That would be fine by me. But anything else, no. Not really. I'm happy. There's a big danger in just standing pat for too long. That was a criticism of Danny Ainge for a while, but I think it's well worse to make the wrong trade haphazardly. So
I don't want to belabor the point, but this is why I consider, and if I think about trades that would involve the Jays, because they're the only ones that have the ability to reshape our team in any material direction. No matter what the team looks like, we're still a team built around the Jays, and if they're not up to, you know what I mean? And if they're not up to it, they're not up to it.
Yeah.
So that's why I tend to more meditate on those. But anyway, I just move on.
I think yeah, we're real quickly on the last thing here. I think if it push came to shove and we needed to like get someone, but it would cost us something, like I could see Jaylen Brown going, you know, and that would break my heart. But like, I feel like we could get something like proper for Jaylen Brown. I don't feel like Tatum would be worth it. I don't feel like maybe Time Lord Smart wouldn't get you what you're after, but Jaylen could be the case. But I'm not prepared to entertain that just yet.
Yeah, I mean, by all accounts in the media, and I'm like, who knows? Because sometimes this kind of stuff is put out in the media just to jack up trade value of a guy like Jaylen Brown. But by all accounts, they're adamantly not shopping those guys, not wanting to trade them at all, and hoping to build around the Jays. I think there is leverage in the Beal situation in that, there's that relationship between Beal and Jason Tatum, and wherever he gets traded to, Beal, hypothetically, if he is traded at all, he is an expiring contract. Like, he is a free agent at the end of this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. And any team would be hesitant to give up, real value for him, thinking that he might go and, sign with his best mate or close mate, Jason Tatum, for the Celtics, who are positioned to clear cap space if they want to or need to. There's an argument for the fact that we have leverage because of that relationship, and could therefore get Beal for less than what he's truly valued at league-wide in a vacuum, forgetting the contract situation. So then it begs the question, Joe, I'll ask you this first. Do you just have to go for Beal with that in mind, given that this, Boston isn't exactly a good free agent destination? We kind of just have to jump on stars when they're available, and do you throw Smart and, the 3 picks and the additional pick swaps and a young player at the Wizards to get Beal with some sort of verbal agreement that he will re-sign at the end of the year?
Well, let's work this through, though, role play it a little bit. Okay. If I'm the Wizards, why do I do that?
Because you're going to lose him for nothing at the end of the year.
Right. So you got to be pretty sure you're losing for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. Because you can't re-sign him, right? You do not have any cap space to re-sign him if you get rid of him. Right? So you've got to cross that, I guess, or fulfill that criteria. So then you've still got to outcompete anybody else who might want to trade for him, right? Has anybody else got pieces that they might be willing to move? Who's a team that might be that's on the up and up and might be looking to move up? I don't know, man. Memphis.
Grizzlies.
You think Memphis could put a better package together than us? Yeah, of course they can.
Yeah.
You know? So sure, in a vacuum, if they offer him to us, yeah, probably. But I guess I see that as a little bit of a moot point. Not to totally shut down to the discussion, but that's how I see that one. Yeah.
No, that's totally fair enough, and it's a worthwhile approach. But yeah, like Jackson said, the Beal thing, we can't get away from it, and not to compare it to the AD situation at all, but this is the point where agents can start to get involved and start to put things out there. Like Beal is, intent on playing with his friend Jason Tatum. Obviously that hasn't happened yet, but these are the sorts of things that we need to be looking out for that would really give us true leverage in a Beal trade, where the Wizards just turn around and say, all right, what do you got? Anyway, that hasn't happened, so let's not speculate on that any further. There is a point, or a post rather, on the Celtics sub by user Indubitably Good Sir, and the title of the post is a statistics-based argument as to why I'm worried about the prospect of a Beal Supermax. And they go on to say, it increasingly looks like last year was a career year for Beal. He has since regressed in every single advanced metric substantially. His win shares over 48 have halved from 0.132 to 0.069. His offensive box plus minus is down from 4.8 to 2.4. Shooting a career low 30% from 3. And there's some more stuff there on his Darko defensive, plus minus, which, you can go look up if you want. We're not going to do a deep dive into what all of these advanced stats mean. Suffice to say, he's shit this year compared to how he's been earlier in his career, and a warning sign, to not give up anything substantial in a Beal trade. But it's concerning, right? How often do you get a stab at a guy like this? So I think you have to seriously consider it. Anything else on any of these other guys before we wrap up? Because, there's other names here to discuss and to consider.
I do have one thing on Max, guys, and that's that, man, it's so much better to sign other people's free agents than, than re-sign your own with the Supermax, eh? Those Supermax contracts are just about never worth it, They're too much for outside of half a dozen players in the NBA.
Yep.
So, I'd rather sign him, and then we're only on the hook for 4 years, That's preferable to me. That's just a point I want to make, and that would be true of any max level but not MVP level player.
The Beal Tatum thing, it almost feels slightly like the whole Gordon Hayward Brad Stevens thing to a degree. You know, there's the link, there's a personal link there. It's, they want to do it, it's going to be great, blah, 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 blah. We all know how that went. But, I mean, one thing on that post, you know, if you look at it another way, then that just means his value is going down, as far as I'm concerned. You know, buy low, sell high. And here's another maybe controversial point. Maybe it was because he was playing with Russell Westbrook. Maybe Russ bought the best out of him in his career year, and maybe playing with, I don't know, a Marcus Smart might bring him back there. I don't know. Terrible thought process there, but I don't know. It's just something that came to mind.
No, we welcome the terrible thought process on this show. I do think that there could be, to your earlier point, a potential John and Yoko situation if we bring in Brad Beal. Suddenly he's the Yoko to Tatum's Lennon, I guess. And then I guess in this case, Jaylen Brown is Paul McCartney. Maybe, I don't know who George Harrison is. Anyway, you know what I'm saying,
back
right?
over Christmas.
I did. I watched it several times. Yeah, I'm a big Beatles fan.
I don't think Yoko
admittedly.
Ono did anything, to be honest. He just sat in the corner, nice and quiet. So probably George Harrison.
Well, do you want to pay someone a max to sit in the corner? Because if we can get Aaron Gordon out there, Gordon, if we can get Neesmith out there to sit in the corner and jack some open threes, then it'll probably cost us a lot less. Anyway, let's steer away from that analogy. Anything else on any other potential trades, guys, before we wrap up? I mean, it sounds like, by all accounts, the Celtics are going to be very active leading into the trade deadline, but I think the general consensus among us is that's going to be active in selling and getting under the tax line.
I feel like it'd be like almost sacrilegious if we didn't mention Bol and and PJ Dozier. We have been active. We've gotten a couple guys. We'll never see them, but we've done something at least. And that was very much had cap moves and cap space and tax in mind as well too. So if we do see another trade, I think it's going to be more to get us under that line too. So I'm not holding out for anything spectacular or major.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't even throw that on our run sheet. I feel terrible.
Literally a second ago.
Terrible host. Joe, you had a point you wanted to end on?
No, man. No. I was answering in the affirmative there.
Okay, well, look, we'll wrap up on this comment from user New Zookeeper Game 772. They say the Hawks on Friday will be a big game. The Kings lost worse than the scoreboard said to the Hawks. It shows that Boston and Atlanta is a clear tier above a team like Sacramento. A loss versus Atlanta will confirm this team is not good enough to be buyers and do need to sell every non-J/Rob ahead of the deadline. Folks, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you for listening. Certainly an interesting and potentially exciting juncture of the Celtics season. In the meantime, if you're enjoying the show, please subscribe, review, share, all that good stuff. Check out our YouTube channel, and most importantly, say good day in the comments. Celtics Jay and Wayne Spoonie are probably going to be back with another pod very soon. In the meantime, Jackson, Joe, love your work, guys. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ben. Cheers, boys.
Go Celtics. Peace.